them solve the puzzle, and then like the thing explodes and you're in there and it's like, oh, come on. But that's a pretty fun one if you only have one headset.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very good. Mark, not kidding. You do play quite a bit. That's a pretty comprehensive list. I have a kind of a different question. This is like a slight change in like the topics here. But Mark, internally you talk a lot about remote work and how it's affected people and COVID, just how this last year has been. What can you share externally about just this year and what your thoughts are on just remote work and everyone working from home?
It's in some ways it's gone better than I would have expected. I've been impressed not only how the Facebook team, but I think probably how most of the industry just adapted overnight. But, in some ways it's a weird experiment because, a lot of people have kids at home and, because everyone is working remotely, it's not quite the same as it's going to be when some people are back in the offices. So it's a little hard to extrapolate from where we are now. What I can tell you is that it's something that I've been optimistic about for a while. So I think this year has been a forcing function to make me want to just accelerate that. And, I announced earlier in the year that I expect that, by the end of this decade, we're probably going to be 50% remote as a company, just because there's, I think, increasingly no reason for us to tie our recruiting and hiring to just a small number of cities where we have offices, especially when most people aren't even going into offices. It just kind of doesn't make sense right now. But, long term, I think one of the things that I'm excited about with VR and AR is I do think that you're going to get this ability through the sense of presence. One of the things that's going to unlock is the ability to live basically wherever you want and be present in another place and really feel like you're there. And, I've done some meetings in VR, obviously a lot over Zoom and video conference. And, what I can say is that the VR meetings, in a lot of ways, it's still a pretty basic experience, right? The avatars are more basic, because you don't have eye tracking in the devices yet. That'll come.
They're getting there, Mark. They're getting there. I promise. We're working on it. They're getting there.
Yeah, but it's tough to do kind of full, eye contact without having eye tracking in the devices. So that'll be, a future device. But there were some things about it that are already better than what you could get on a VC call today. So for example, spatial audio, right? It turns out that, a lot of the ways that people process and remember things is, you're sitting around in a circle or, some room with people, and you have a shared sense of space. Right? If I'm sitting next to Fiji, then that means Fiji's also sitting next to me, and we kind of have that shared sense of space. And if she is sitting to my left, and if she speaks, then that sound is coming to me from the left, not kind of straight on from a screen. And, a lot of, and that all these things, right, kind of the audio and the kind of shared kind of visual experience is how we perceive and remember things. So, one of the things that I found is when I do meetings in VR, I actually find it easier to remember kind of what happened in the discussion, whereas all the Zoom calls and all that, it all, it's a very kind of amorphous, undefined sense of space that's not natural for people. And I think it's actually kind of hard to process and remember, who said what, because where were they sitting? It's like, I don't know, So I think that there is going to be something that's very powerful about remote presence in VR and AR, and that's going to, I think, not only be a more productive experience in a lot of ways, but it's going to unlock a lot of economic opportunity because people are going to be able to live wherever they want and increasingly work wherever they want and kind of teleport into places. And I'm also pretty optimistic about the impact on the climate, right, and reducing the amount of commuting and travel that people have to do. It's I think the advances in in electric cars and reducing emissions from all that are really great and exciting. But one of the things that I always tell our team is it's like, all right, come on, it's 2021. It's easier to move bits around than atoms. So we should be teleporting more than we are actually physically transporting ourselves to different places as much as possible. And obviously the VR and AR type of stuff is going to enable that a lot more. So
I don't know I don't know if you remember this, Mark, but when you first started talking to me about, the Facebook Reality Labs work, this is like what I wrote. I was like, yeah, I mean, our cities are wildly inefficient. We pay, especially in the Bay Area, a ton of money to have real estate that's empty all day while we're at work. And our company pays a ton of money to have real estate that's empty all night while we're at home. And we're all fighting traffic for 2 hours a day to get between those places. It's wildly inefficient. And if you expand it to the global scale, think of all the talent. We know that we're lucky. We know that there's people out there who are as talented or more talented than we are, but they didn't have access to geographic mobility. They couldn't leave their support structures. They couldn't, or they were part of someone else's support structure. Raj Chetty's work at Stanford, now at Harvard, where since geographic mobility is down, economic mobility is down. And the only reason for that, I swear to God, is because humans are so wired for facial expressions and face-to-face contact that all that economic inefficiency on a global scale is actually justified today. And VR is the first technology I've seen that seems like it could close the gap. The push from the pandemic has made it clear that it's not the only one. Obviously, a high-res, portal 4K to 4K kind of connection is great for one-on-one. For multi-person chats, though, VR has the glimmer of a thing that could break through that morass and completely change how we think about cities and population density and a bunch of other things, and take more advantage of all the talent around the world and more evenly distribute the fruits of labor all around the world. I think it's just, that's literally why I took this job. Mark was asking me about it, and I was trying to think through why it was so important to me, and that's what I came up with.
Yeah. All right, guys. This is fun, but I did promise Priscilla that I was going to be on here for 5 minutes. So
thank you, Mark.
Got to listen to the boss. Got to listen to the boss. All right. We'll do another one of these another night that where we can cover the stuff in a bit more detail. But I hope you all have fun and good night.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
So
Thank you for showing up.
Thanks so much.
Can I just say I'm so glad Mark showed up, because Sriram is saying when he said there's going to be a special guest when I told him I would crash Buzz's interview, and everybody assumed it would be Mark, and that would have been the biggest disappointment if Mark didn't it was just me. So I'm so glad
Okay, can I respond to that? And I promise.
No, don't. You don't get to respond.
No,
it's all true. So just move on.
No, it's my show. I told Fiji this, and Fiji can back up. I actually told
This is Arthi's show. Hold on. This is not your show. This is Arthi's show.
Okay, Fiji, I wanted to ask you the similar-ish question. I think for FB app or for Facebook itself overall, what's been hard through the COVID time, through the last year of just remote work, and what have you seen?
So on remote work in particular, the thing that we still have to figure out is how we maintain culture through this time. And I think, everything that the guys have said on VR makes a ton of sense, and I think there's a lot of potential there. But the thing we haven't cracked yet is really how do we continue taking a culture that, we've very much developed in a world where we were all in the same buildings, and start adapting it to a world where we're going to have people all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I think we haven't totally had to solve for that in the last year, because we could rely on a lot of people being together and having a lot of shared culture already. But for the new people, it's been, I think, challenging, and we're still trying to find ways to do onboarding in a better way. And then you asked for the Facebook app, I think the thing that we've seen is just during this time, a ton of trends that we would have anticipated to take years have been just accelerating in a matter of months. And for us, it's been trends like, groups obviously becoming a lot bigger and people relying on these communities in times of crisis way more than they did in the past. Entertainment, and especially live entertainment, growing extremely fast because people are just craving escapism. And, Buzz can talk about gaming as well, because that's definitely across both of our worlds, but we've seen that really take off. So a lot of these trends are just massively accelerated, and we've had to keep pace with that and really adapt our roadmaps really fast.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we've seen a lot of this too. It's just, the pace of which we've been able to adapt, I think, is like just quite something. And I think, just through the last year, people have had like very, very different experiences through the pandemic. Like I'm talking about just employees working, right? And I just feel like we've just been able to come together in ways that we could not have fathomed. To be able to still like deliver and do the best that we can. So it's really fun to go see that and just you being able to lead a lot of that and see that from your viewpoint.
So, Boz, since our previous guest kind of got us on the VR AR topic, I want to get to some of the Facebook culture stuff and culture with both you and Fiji in the second half. I'm curious to get your take, right? What do you think about, just how do you see the next, 5 to 10 years of virtual reality, and also how do you see VR versus AR? Because I think that's also a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think VR, we're at the elbow. It's fun for me to be at that point. I recognize it. I think those of us who've been in the industry a while have learned to recognize it. And you just see that nice curve shape. There's a long way to go. We're dealing with atoms, not bits, so you don't get those internet-like curves. But we're pretty dang good. And it's just, honestly, before Quest 2 launched, I knew it. We all knew it. That product is fun. It's a technical achievement to get it to the price that it is, and the dev community is now rallying around it. It's just all hitting really well. So VR for me feels poised to go mainstream, and I think one of the keys to that is not just gaming, but moving beyond gaming. You look at the growth now of Supernatural, of Fit XR. We're trying to support those with things like Oculus Move. If you look at like what Mark said, we're starting to play with these ideas of workspaces and look, pure social spaces are doing well too. VR chat, rec room. And so what you're seeing is after successfully kind of establishing itself in a niche, now it's getting the enthusiasm. We're on the upward spiral, not just of adoption, but of developer interest. And the roadmaps are exciting. We have we're at the very early stages. And so I can see all the pieces that are going to come into play over the next 4, 5, 6 years. They're going to make it even better, even more useful. So VR just feels like it's over the hump. Still a ton of work to do to actually push it up that hill, but it's on that trajectory now. AR is just the goddamn hardest thing. It's so hard. It's really going to be awesome. It's going to be everything we imagined. It's going to take a while. The references for AR, honestly, you have to go back, and I'm inspired by our chief scientist, Michael Abrash, on this. You have to go back to Xerox PARC, to MIT, to Berkeley. You have to go back to the Media Lab. You have to go back to these places where they were first trying to figure out how to connect man to machine, how to get intentions from my brain into the thing. And by the way, we ended on the keyboard and mouse. Those aren't great. Like, they're good, but like keyboard and mouse, they're relatively low bandwidth. And then you got to figure out how to get the information back into my brain, which is a screen right now. We've been on that paradigm since then, since the 60s. Phones are just the latest thing in that paradigm. So for me, I think AR is not just, okay, the technology is hard. Sure. How do you get the photons to do what you want to do? Honestly,